Hi everybody, it's the Week in the Tackle podcast, the podcast where we look back at the previous week or weekend in football and tackle things that we thought were interesting. I'm Tom Rennie, Premier League commentator and radio personality. He's Brian Dunseth, television commentator, unnecessarily youthful looking man, and he works on all the top broadcasters. So why he does this podcast with me, I've no f***ing idea. Sorry, Tim. Hey, Dunny, you all right?
I'm doing fantastic, my man. As always, excited to be here for a good 45 minutes to an hour and make it extremely difficult for our guy, Tim Horsey, to figure out where the bleeps actually lie when he's taking another day off and he's not joined us.
He's actually currently, as we record this, producing another podcast, which I assume makes money. We make some money, not the money that they make probably, but we make some money. We'd love more money. So if you know someone who's looking for a kind of Anglo-American podcast that just talks about football and not about that other sorry, Tim, then, tell them about Week in the Tackle, all right? We tackle soccer and soccer-related stories here on the programme. We do a bit of MLS. Danny's been at a game. I've normally been to a Premier League game, done some commentary on another one. So, that's what we do here, okay? And welcome to our new listeners. And if you go around someone's house, go on their YouTube, and you can sign in, subscribe on YouTube and watch it. And today, because Danny is so irritatingly young looking for a man, you won't believe this if you're watching this on YouTube, actually my senior, I've decided today, Danny, for the first time to add some soft lighting, visual effects to soften my appearance. So I actually think, is this what you've been doing the entire time? Because in person, you look like sorry, Tim, but in this Zoom call, you look amazing. Look at me. Look how good I look.
You look good. You look good. I'm telling you, between your wife going to see Craig David a week and a half ago and having some Sabukas, and now this, you ever watch this show? Baby Rennie coming in hot and heavy, early to late November-ish, somewhere there.
That sounds absolutely horrendous. Please don't even joke about that.
Nappies.
I was taking the girl next door. My parents were now. Cheap phone said, "Hey boy, come right around." Oh, Christ, I can feel her getting horny right now just hearing me do that Craig David lyric. Maybe a sorry, Tim, I don't know. Anyway, football this week. Before we get to, I want to ask you about Man United. I would like to talk about the Matheus Cunha and Anthony Gordon red cards, which were just so stupid. But I do feel sorry for at least Anthony Gordon a bit, so we'll talk a bit about that. This goalkeepers thing, if we've got some time. Plus, I would like to mention Liam Roberts trying to take Jean Phillipe Mateta's face off, which I thought was, like, genuinely when I watched something, I thought it was so diabolical. I don't normally get like emotionally sort of invested in things, but I was like, no, I'm sorry, that's not acceptable what he's just done. Yeah. That's proper unacceptable what that keeper did. So I do want to talk about it. Before we do, though, you've been on some planes. Where have you been? What have you been up to? Did you see Real Salt Lake, the worst named club in the world?
You're on one today. I actually stayed home. It was my birthday weekend. I turned 48 years old on Sunday. And so I was able to ask my boss, Kristen, over at Apple TV and MLS Soccer, if I could stay home because it was double-sided. Micah, my middle boy, was being acknowledged on the field for a tournament that he had won with his group of teammates, his team. So he was one of like 15 teams that were on the field at halftime at America First Field. So got to spend my birthday at home. It was afternoon kickoff against Real Salt Lake, Seattle Sounders. Micah was on the field. Shia, Micah, and Luca were in the stadium hanging out. I got to bring the boys up. I do this thing during the broadcast is we try to identify different kids throughout or different programs or whatever, fans in the stadium, and we bring them up and literally put the headsets on them and just put the mics kind of up like this so you can't hear them when they're talking. But put the headsets on.
Don't do that if you go on air.
Yeah,
Mike's got to be by the
awkward.
face. Rule one.
Yeah. But for those, we have T.O. Max calling the game. We'll bring a bunch of fans in, and then I'll be on the side calling the games. I got to bring a couple of guys from Shia's team up and spend some time. Then I brought Micah's whole team up, which is just awesome because, like, here we are as soccer fans watching the game, and I always, like, imagine what it's like being up in the gantry with you, depending upon the stadium. So for those at home, just kind of like pulling the curtain back, let the kids who know me as a dad for my boys get to see what it's like when they listen to me as a broadcaster and, they're at home on the couch watching a game. So that was great. Fun game, 2-0 win for Real Salt Lake. Two really solid teams that'll be playoff teams in the Western Conference this year. Went home, had some sushi, and then woke up yesterday and boys were, bringing me a cup of coffee in the morning. They made German pancakes. Micah had gone to the store and he diced up some granny green apples, made like an applesauce for the top of them. Ended up wasting my time for 3 hours watching Man United. Then went on a couple bike rides
I
with
can't believe
Luca
you
through
watched
the.
it on your birthday. I
Dude,
didn't
it
think you
was
were
a
going to watch it.
disaster. I literally was texting people. And I was like, if these MFers losing penalties, and I just sat 3 hours here. Took a couple bike rides with my son Luca through the neighborhood, my 7-year-old. We went to the park. We had a picnic. My wife put together this
Oh,
great picnic. Weather was incredible. Heart is full. Had an unbelievable day. So yeah, fun little weekend. Didn't have to get on a plane. Won't be on a plane this weekend. I've got RSL San Diego. Weekends after that, I go to San Diego. I go to Charlotte. I go to Chicago. I go to Atlanta. So some significant travel upcoming, but yeah, I get to spend some time. Oldest boy made the high school team. Middle boy working his tail off. Younger boy got to play this weekend. So yeah, it was fun to be able to be home and be a weekend dad. Something that I don't get to do too often during the regular season in Major
do
League
you
Soccer.
say RSL because you're embarrassed to say Real Salt Lake?
Do you know the story behind that? Have I ever told you the
You
story?
you you have told me, and it's still
Yeah,
embarrassing.
yeah,
It's still
yeah.
embarrassing. It's still a
Well,
really bad name. Just
how
bad
about the
name.
Claret and Cobalt is their colors? Because I don't know if you
That's
know
good.
this.
That's good.
Claret and Cobalt, kind of the red and the blue of Real Salt Lake, are
Yes.
meant to little homage to Utah, University of Utah, which is red, and BYU, which is blue. So the claret and the cobalt is an offset of the red and blue,
Yeah.
kind of tying into Utah and the two big universities, Utah.
Everything about it is great. I love the club. I love
Real
everything
Salt
about it,
Lake.
except the word Real, which means royal, and it's
Yeah,
stupid. Just change it to something like earthquakes. Amazing.
yeah.
Crew. Yes. Timbers. Hook it to my veins. Wizards. Yes. Metro stars. Amazing. Some exist, some don't, but whatever.
Clash. San Jose Clash.
Love them. Love all of
No, you
them.
don't. Clash.
American names. No,
Yeah.
American names. Good.
Eh,
Do American names for
eh,
American things.
yeah.
Best not get into that. Anyway, the only thing I was going to mention too, as well, is you do give me hope because I do have, as you know, young babies. Mine are 2 and 4, and when I see you out enjoying your life, and I see me not, I think, yeah, that could be me soon, one day. We had my mother come to take the kids on Saturdays. I don't work the FA Cup weekends. I do a lot of work, so I try not to work them if I can help it. And sometimes we used to go on holiday. We used to do a city break in like
Yeah.
late February, early March FA Cup. And now what we did was my mum come to take the kids, and we went to the shops and just walked around without the kids. It was
Yeah.
amazing. We had the
Yeah.
best time.
Freedom. No,
The
but you
best
guys,
time.
for all the jokes, and I know you bust a lot of chops, and sometimes people just think you're an absolute. Sorry, Tim. I don't because I know you, and I know that there's a certain amount of pomp and
No.
circumstance, and the way you kind of play the game within the game, and I think you do an amazing job at it. But I do know for a fact you're a great dad, and I
Mm,
do know for a fact, despite the fact that you talk so much trash about your kids at times, you are the utmost family man. And you do a
mm,
great, like you take the kids away. You guys do little mini trips when you can. You do the big trips when you want to. So I'm
yeah.
just at a different stage, man. It's a different
No,
stage, which
sounds amazing.
now I have to have a conversation with my boys and be like, did you put the deodorant in your bag and an extra toothbrush? Because you guys are hyenas and you stink and you're full grown. And I'm spending $750 on average per trip to Costco every other week because all they do is fucking graze around the house. Sorry, Tim, on food constantly. And I can't even go to grab burgers, like burgers and fries and a soda for dinner is going to cost me $100 at this point. So yeah, if you add a third, they always talk about, oh, you lost man for man coverage. That ain't the fucking point. Sorry, Tim. They're expensive. I love my kids to death. They're fucking expensive. Sorry, Tim.
Yeah. Yeah.
And wait, like I haven't even complained about the cost of soccer here in the United States, which I'm roughly in around like 8 or 9 grand easily right
Yeesh.
now for a season in county. Easily.
You can tell Tim's not here today because we did 10 minutes of just like catching up before the actual show began.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's do a little bit of Man
Woolly
United.
mammoth bones.
You did a great job. Yes, that was last week's diversion. Let's do a little bit of it. The FA Cup, it doesn't draw our attention massively, but I will say I'm quite enthused about the FA Cup quarter-final draw this year. If Bournemouth can beat Man City, and let's all together as football fans just take a second to hope that happens. Let's do it together. That means it's going to happen now. That's the power of our positivity. Fulham against Palace, Preston against Villa, Bournemouth against City, Brighton against Forest or Ipswich as we record this. I'm not sure who's going to win. We're doing it before they play on the Monday. But, like, I know this won't sell very much in America, and I know people in some countries aren't necessarily going to care about this version of the FA Cup. This is my version of the FA Cup. This is the version I desperately want. Man City not to win it, and there to be a winner between Fulham, Palace, Preston, Villa, Bournemouth, Brighton, Forest, or Ipswich. I love that. I can't wait to be at that final. And as long as City are out, you know, the winner of the FA Cup this year, like Man United won it last year, right? And it was great and that, and everyone sort of enjoyed it, right? No one hates winning a trophy, but there was that kind of like, well, you know, at least that's nice little send off for Ten Hag, and it's not like the old days. And when Man City used to win it, blah blah blah. Loads of winners have been a bit like that. You know, when I always get annoyed when I think that Man United under Van Gaal won the FA Cup that should have been Palace's. You know, I was at that one. It was such a huge day for Crystal Palace, and you had to party, dance, and all that shit. Sorry, Tim, which is fantastic. So I was delighted Man United got knocked out. In short, it was great. Thoughts?
But by the way, Pardew, it's that iconic kind of shimmy shoulder, the little Chicharito shimmy shoulder, is like Big Sam when he's like, ooh, when the player got into his face. And he's like,
Yes.
ooh, what are you gonna do about it? Like, I thought those are like two of my more famous, like,
Amazing.
favorite confrontational moments. Yeah, listen, I hadn't thought about it that way because I was so pissed off about United. But yeah, if you get City out of what's been a horrific year for them, obviously, which for those that aren't Man City fans absolutely love. Yeah, the idea of any of these other teams, even knocking Villa out of the conversation, Preston North End, Crystal Palace, Fulham, Ipswich Town, Forest, Brighton, Bournemouth. It would be rub your fingers together, right? Just like the DNA fabric historical relevance of taking out the top 6, top 7, top 8 teams in the Premier League. Specific to Man United, I just don't even know. Like, here's what I know. Outside of goalkeeper, Bruno's probably the best in every single position on the field for Manchester United. I don't like the demonstrative attitude at times, but the guy's a winner. Like, he's just he just wants to win. Garnacho's still exciting. Ugarte is still one of my favorites. You know, when you dig in any Christian Eriksen is class and always will be class, whether at this stage of his career or what it was at Tottenham. And everybody else I'm indifferent to. I mean, I don't. Cheeto Obi Martin, I thought, got caught up in the psychology of the game, and it wasn't until
17, though. Good on him.
Yeah, and it wasn't until Xerxes settled. Because I've been watching him ever since he came over from Arsenal. I've been watching as many of the games and highlights on YouTube as I possibly can, and he is just lighting it up, absolutely lighting it up in his age group, and playing for Manchester United. That half touch where an incredible save from Bernd Leno and where he gets that up, that had eyes for far post, but he had a couple of heavy touches where he kept losing the ball. Again, outside of that, Casemiro was pinging the ball around when he came on. I don't know. It's just the fact that I can't wait for this season to be over is basically where I'm at. I'm like where Chelsea was a couple of years ago, where Liverpool was a couple of years ago. Like, I'm excited for the season to be over at this stage because I don't know how you could possibly make an argument that there's been anything good that has come out of this season so far for United. And credit to Fulham. They hung around. They did great. Anthony Robinson, I thought, was phenomenal down that left-hand side. Iwobi was constantly antagonistic with some of his movements. Who else in that? I love Joachim Anderson. Like, he's a throwback to an old free center back with the way that he plays. And I thought Leno, I was texting back and forth with a couple Arsenal fans saying, like, is Ramsdale and David Raya better than Leno? I said probably so. But Leno on the night where I think he single-handedly got them through. Great stuff in the penalty shootout, and came up with that huge hand on Cheeto with a few minutes remaining.
Well, Raya's a better midfielder, and that's what Arteta wants, right? He doesn't want to win the league. He wants a better midfielder, so that's fine.
Sure.
And also, if they do win the FA Cup this year, Fulham, wherever they finish in the league, I think Alex Iwobi should be, and he will certainly be in our conversation for Player of the Year. Every time I watch Fulham, he's just been so
Fun
good.
to watch, yeah.
And like he's also like a pop star, also super down to earth guy. Thought his career was sort of over. Frank Lampard had him playing defensive midfield 2 years ago, and has now become this incredible creative force for Fulham. So
Was he the masked rapper? Was it?
yeah,
Was it
no,
Iwobi? It was him.
I'm not sure if it was him or Nketiah was the masked rapper, but he is a rapper
Okay.
who does release songs and like, is a proper. He's an artist. So whether you're at the Brits, which is like our version of what do you have? Not the Emmys. What's the pop one you do?
Oh.
Grammys. It's like our
Oh.
Grammys. There we go. Sorry. Anyway,
It's all rigged. Somebody tried to convince me that Beyonce won Country Album of the Year. So
yeah,
at that point, I don't watch any of that. Sorry, Tim.
yeah. I thought it should have been Hillary. So in terms of Fulham, steady. The FA Cup. I was trying to find the notes earlier, didn't have it. So aside from Man City in 23, Ipswich are the most recent FA Cup winners left in 1978.
Wow.
Fulham, Palace, Bournemouth, and Brighton have never won the FA Cup. Never. Fulham famously lost in 1975 to West Ham when Bobby Moore was the captain of Fulham in the game, which is incredible. A couple of other bits from the game or post game I did want to get your view on. The Wayne Rooney Amorim, let's say spat. Well, you can correct it if you don't like it. But Rooney's doing the TV. He was Plymouth manager previously. So, obviously you're going to put Wayne Rooney if you can. And he said that Amorim's post-match comments, which were, our ambitions are to win the Premier League or words to that effect. Rooney replied saying, I think it's naive to say they're looking to win the Premier League because from where they are now, they're a long way off. Amorim then responded saying, yeah, well, it's easy to be a pundit, not easy to be a manager. That's why I'm United manager at 40 and Wayne Rooney's a fat geezer with a Weetabix haircut. Not the last bit.
I don't think he said that.
I made up the last bit, but that was the intention. Sorry, Wayne. What did you make to this spat? Because I mentioned last week to you, Dunny, that when Amorim came out at halftime at Goodison, he looked like he was at the wedding of a woman he'd loved for a million years who was marrying his best friend.
Jesus. I understand both sides. I listen. I think that one of the byproducts of having so many former historically successful Manchester United pundits is that they have a unique view on what once was versus what now is. And they are uncompromising because a majority, if not all of these Manchester United former players were lifting trophies in multiple competitions. And it's got to be insanely difficult for them to look back and reference their timeline versus what they're seeing right now. I agree with Wayne Rooney to an extent in that the mantra, and this is a byproduct of, I think, Ruben Amorim being so front-facing, at times a little bit too open, but he doesn't have like the same shtick. He's not getting the same shtick from like the general public or the media members because I think he has been truthful and honest. I think he does put himself in a bad situation or at least an unnecessary conversation piece when he's talking about, the worst Man United of all time. And you got to backtrack, but he's saying what people think. He's saying what people see. For Wayne Rooney, what he wants to hear effectively is, this is sorry, Tim. And like, what are you going to do to make it better? And Ruben Amorim is saying, hold on a second. You just got sacked at Plymouth without saying so many things because when he retired, he did some TV, then he went to management and he's using reference points of, dude, you kind of know how bad this is. So but come on, man, like know your role a little bit. So I'm fine with both sides of it. At the end of the day, this is my biggest gripe about the situation. I feel for Ruben Amorim in that he should be responsible for the players, for the tactics, and for everything that's on the field. And the problem is, much like we've seen with whether it's Enzo Maresca in preseason, before the window's shut, talking about players that are on the outside looking in, that's not necessarily a product of his determination. That's more of the board and those around him. I am of the belief that managers should only be answering questions about the team, about the players, about the tactics, about the wins and the losses. Anything else, those board members should drag their asses down, sit in front of the pulpit of all of the reporters, have the microphone and the cameras on, and answer the questions.
Yeah.
Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Sir Dave Brailsford, Omar Barada, Jason Wilcox, hell, even Dan Ashworth, they should be the ones that should be front and center for what's happening behind the scenes and this roster construction versus Ruben Amorim having to take sucker punch after sucker punch to the goblet for things that have nothing to do with him, but yet he's the only one being rolled out in front of the general press on a week by week basis, if not a daily basis. So I get it. I kind of agree with both sides. Ultimately, can everyone just please focus on winning and losing and getting this season over as quickly as possible?
Yeah.
Because this is a diabolical failure for all involved, including the most important, this group of players, that there should be nothing different of anything that they've ever experienced. Because I think what gets lost in this conversation is I could use a reference point of late October, early November, when Ruben Amorim at Sporting Lisbon is absolutely smashing Man City in Champions League. The reality is, whether they're his players or not, this group of players have played in the system. They understand. They're intelligent enough to understand their strengths and weaknesses of how the manager wants to play. And at the bare minimum, it's just not good enough, both with and without the ball. Results are suspect. They're questioning their talent and commitment level. And that just, as a professional player, as a former professional player, that would have been egotistically the most bitter pill to swallow, as that someone is constantly checking and asking, like, are you giving it your all? Because at a bare money, take away the money, take away the cars, take away the houses, take away the model wives, take away the vacations, take away all that. It's like, hold on a second. This fucking asking me if I fucking care enough about this club. Sorry, Tim. Sorry, Tim. Like, that for me is the biggest check that nobody wants to deal with.
I don't want to do too much Man United. Other things to talk about.
Me
But
neither.
just one final thing I wanted to add on this, and feel free to comment or we just move on. But like, I just keep thinking about a conversation I had with Danny Higginbottom last Tuesday on the football show, and I love chatting to Danny, but he is, he's pro Man United to a degree. It's
Yeah,
subliminally
he's a
whatever as
fan.
you are,
Played
he's
there.
a fan. That's the way it goes. But I just think that like there's two elements to Man United moving forward, which we're going to follow with great detail. Number one, all this he wants to get his own players stuff. That's great, and I hope he does get his own players, and we see whatever the plan was. But this summer's going to be incredibly hard for Man United to shift some of these players, to get them off the wage bill, to attract people to the club, to have the money to do that. So they're weighing out the broccoli. So how they're going to attract the top talent? Would Alexander Isak even consider Man United? I think the answer is no. They wouldn't be able to come up with the top money to do it. He's owned by Saudi Arabia, blah, blah, blah. But I think that replicates across a lot of players. And the other element as well is like the players that are there, if it does happen, they manage to get them out. What does it matter what they learned or didn't learn during this 6-month period where he's in charge? Play to their strengths, cancel this season, and then when you get your players in, do your thing. And that's the bit where naivety, I think, has struck a chord. Because I think on that score, I think he has been a bit naive. Because these guys that are playing at the weekend, if he has his way, beyond Ugarte and at a push one or two others, Bruno, one or two others, but like he wants to change 7 of them. So play 5-4-1.
Yeah, no.
This off. Sorry, Tim, and we'll just move on. That's the bit I thought was quite interesting.
Well, I also think that, and then maybe this is more of a philosophical conversation, and you could probably apply this to Arsenal as well. And I'm not trying to like take shots. I'm using reference points for like their number 9 position. Is we have to figure out this thing that's not just business acumen when we're talking about the needs of a team. And by that, I mean, like, let's use Dusan Vlahovic, or we'll use Ivan Toney, or we'll use Ollie Watkins, or John Duran, or Victor Osimhen, or whatever. All guys that absolutely immediately would make you better in the number 9 position. But being in such a data-driven idea now of what, they don't fit the model. Like, he's too old. He's 27. We're looking for a 19. We're looking for a 19 to a 23-year-old where if we pay 50 million pounds for a player that we know after 4 years, we can either renegotiate a new contract because he's insanely successful, or we can sell the player and that inherent value is going to be better than what we bought him for. We get mixed in this weird little dialogue of like, no, they fucking make you better now. Sorry, Tim. Like, now. Not about like 4 years from now.
There is no 4-year plan.
Exactly. It's a 5-year plan. It's a 3-year plan. It's a 1, like, boop. We changed the manager in November. So this idea, to your point, like and it's Man United. So who knows with all these BS Twitter bots and whatever, but it's like, Victor Osimhen's representation has agreed to future financial documentation for a move to Manchester United. And you're like, well, yeah, I mean, that would be an immediate upgrade theoretically to Højlund and Xerxes or Cheeto. Obi Martin in this position. But now you kind of like boxed yourself in with these three younger players. So how do you bring in an established guy, which then you're going to glass ceiling development of 2 to 3 players that you think are going to be the next Rashford slash Mason Greenwood for this team.
Mhm.
So I don't know, man. It's to your point. If you're going to win, if you're going to try to win, do you really need Ruben Amorim's playing style right now, or you just say, sorry, Tim, this group of players is better suited for a 4-2-3-1. Keep the game in front of them, hit in transition moments, see if we can just get halfway up the table compared to where we are now. And then in the summer, we go back to basics. But
Yeah.
pride is a weird drug when you're talking about guys at this, at this age, both on the field and off the field.
Just a reminder that Tim Horsey is producing this program in post today. So good luck, bud. Before we get on to, can we do that? I don't know. That might be blurred now.
Blurred.
Before we get on to a couple of other stories now, heroes and villains of the weekend, just a reminder, I mentioned at the top of the program, if you're enjoying the program, like and subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, also subscribe on Spotify. And if you're listening as a podcast, you can watch the program in full on YouTube. We love our reviews. Forgive me, I not sweat for the written reviews this week, but we are getting so many 5-star ratings from our listeners. We love a 5-star rating. The more 5-star ratings we get, the higher we are in people's searches. So please continue to like the program. Tell your friends to like the program. Like it on your dad's phone. Don't go into the history tab, but do just like it in the podcast thing.
Oh boy.
Anyway, moving on. I do want to talk about Matheus Cunha. Because I don't know if you saw this weekend the game between Bournemouth and Wolves. It was actually a pretty great cup tie, actually. Loads of chances. Bournemouth could have won it like 15-0. There was an 8-minute check for a goal that Kirkesh, I think it was, who scored it in the end. But it was like, was there an offside? Was there
VAR
a
down.
foul?
VAR down.
It was just like after
Tech.
it was like
Tech.
after 5 minutes, I went out and I made a tea and I came back in and I like to properly brew a tea. I have a turmeric tea with a dash of oat milk, and yes, I'm a ponce. What of it? And I come back in
Healthy.
6 minutes later. I do like a 6-minute brew and a dash, and I'm ready. I'm thinking, right, game will be back on. I actually thought I'd accidentally paused the TV because I was like, what? Like,
Yeah.
still checking it.
Still?
Whatever. They got the decision. Who knows if it was right? I mean, it was right, I guess. But anyway.
Was it?
Well, yeah, okay. I don't want to get involved in that today. We can't get involved in that. But Cunha scores an amazing goal. This guy's incredible, right? He's an incredible footballer. He is maybe the only Maverick in the league that's going to come out of this season with any sort of he carried that team. There's not many Mavericks really doing the business in the Premier League this year for whatever reason. Probably a wider conversation we can have. Scores an incredible goal. But then late in the game, 120th minute, extra time, he kicks, pushes, and headbutts Milos Kirkesh and gets sent off. Second massive head loss of the season for Cunha. He's the guy who nicked the glasses off the coach for, was it Ipswich, I think, and there was a big brawl, and then Gary O'Neill got the sack after that. I just wanted to see what you thought about it in terms of, he's not going to be at Wolves next year. There's a £65 million release clause they'll get from lots of clubs. I'm sure that's quite low in the market up 2 years ago, maybe not the market coming up. But what did you make to what he did? What do you make to it being another head loss that he's had? And it is worth mentioning too, are they going to be safe, Wolves? Yeah, probably. But the next set of games include West Ham. I think it might be Ipswich. They're playing soon, and another game. They may well have to have him banned for longer than the 3 games you get for a violent conduct red. I think Kuda's got 6, I think, start of the season. This should be at least 6. Second time he's done a violent conduct. What did you make to this whole thing, Dunny? It was bizarre.
Yeah, wasn't it Cunha that he just re-upped his deal
Yes.
3 weeks ago, right? And
Yeah,
it was after
to put in the release clause, I think.
Yeah, because he was trying to leave allegedly Saudi Arabia, there was significant funds that were made available. Didn't he take himself out of training or out of contention there as well? I feel like it got a little bit dicey there because he wanted to go or he wanted to get paid. So
yeah.
He ends up getting paid. Supremely talented. When I watch him, he's combative. He's demonstrative. He's got everything, checks the box. It's interesting. I was listening to Javier Mascherano, and he said now Inter Miami head coach. And he was talking about, the pincher, the little crab claws that Luis Suarez and Lionel Messi are doing, where they grab someone by the back of the neck and they just do a quick little pinch, get away with it, hands to the neck or face, not a red card, whatever. And in the, not justification, but just reminding people, for us as former players or for analysts or pundits or fans, we're judging based on the actions that we're seeing, but inside that cauldron of the white lines for 90 minutes, that you have to there's a me versus you mentality,
Yeah.
live or die. Um, and not to justify that, because I've seen red mist. I've got my sense off. I almost cost the United States a spot at the Olympics in 2000. In what was it, like March of 2000, qualifying in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Some guy popped the ball up over the top of an attacking player who was closing me down to Steve Cherundolo, LAFC head coach. Bundles me over. I know he's getting a red. Like, he's standing over me. He grabs me by my ear, tries to pick me up. For some reason, I was like, this mother. And I grabbed him. Like, I'm on the ground. I grab him by his legs and I stand up. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? I let go. He tumbles over. He gets a red. I get a red. End up getting like a $2,000 fine, whatever. Um, to this day, I can't tell you what happened. I don't know what happened. I don't. I just know that, like, me growing up and like fighting his kids and whatever, that red mist just went, whoosh, and I was like, boom, got to get him. Um, that's what I saw from Cunha. I don't think like his intent was to end up reacting to the threshold in which we saw him reacting. He's certainly culpable for whatever punishment is coming his way. But I think that's maybe one of the reasons why, and I hate to like say this is maybe why he's at Wolves, but maybe that's part why he's at Wolves is there's a temperament. Like, we love these players that operate at the highest threshold. And then at the same time, there's going to be a scout and there's going to be a game in which he's seen him like, really good player. But if that's his action, if he can't control his temperament, like so I told you a couple weeks ago, I was in Albuquerque and one of like my son's teammates ended up getting a red at the final whistle.
Mm.
And at first he was kind of laughing about it. And then he was kind of like, well, it wasn't that big of a deal. And I kind of like walked over very quietly. And I was like, dude, too good of a player for that. Sorry, Tim. I was like, you got to get that out. Like, I go, because you're one of the best players on the field. And what happens if there was a scout sitting in that corner watching
Yeah.
you play? And that's what happens at the end of the game. You know what they're going to do? They take their pen, nope, and just cross you out. Like, you're done. You're going to lose an opportunity because right now they're looking for the guys that they can trust, the guys that can make them better, the guys that can be that next generation. So these are one of those moments where, listen, he's really, really good, really, really good player. But this hurts him short term and it hurts his team short to midterm because they're not as good when he's not on the field.
I mean, they will not stay up without Matheus Cunha. Even from this point,
Good
I don't think
point.
they'll win
Yeah.
another game without Matheus Cunha. So how much he gets banned for is going to be really, really interesting. It
Yeah.
does then require Ipswich Town to win a game, so they're fine. I did want to ask you briefly about Anthony Gordon as well, who also got sent off this weekend for a bit of a brain fart. The kind of ball had gone dead in the penalty area. He was chasing it down. Van Hecker was in front of him for Brighton, and he just sort of swings his arm at his head. Again, you explained the red mist a second ago, so I think it's sort of the same sort of question, but more broadly, missed the 2023 Carabao Cup Final, cup tie. He played for Everton earlier in the tournament. He's now going to miss the Carabao Cup Final because he got sent off in the FA Cup. And it's not necessarily about Gordon. It's more about the fact it seems wrong to me that he would miss games in another competition,
Not a
having
fan.
got
Yeah.
a suspension in like another competition. It doesn't make sense to me that happens. I think that's something I would absolutely rectify. But also, like Newcastle as well, as they did 2 years ago, going into the Carabao Cup final, fucking crumbling. Sorry,
Yeah.
Tim. Like, emotionally, form, all of it just falling apart again as they head towards a cup final. Like, I'm sure they'll beat West Ham on Monday. It's a lovely fixture, that. But like,
Yeah.
just what is happening here at Newcastle? And it's bollocks, the suspension thing.
Yeah, I mean, as a Man United fan, it's Dorgu, same situation. Like, he would have made against Fulham, made them strategically much better on that left hand side. Anthony Gordon, I need to, I didn't watch the game, but I did obviously see the red card, and I wonder how much of a build that was. I remember having conversations with referees, asking them, like, hey, not for nothing, but like, do you ever take into account what's happened previous games to then moments where like you get to make a decision? And they're like, nah, each game needs to stand on its own. And I was like, yeah, but like context and like, like a tackle or an injury because of a tackle that happened, a couple of games ago, last time these two teams met versus like, do you ever look for that insight? Maybe like why there's a potential payback situation or whatever. Just in this game, like I wonder what was the buildup to that moment that he kind of comes through with, I call it a flying taco because the head lips back and it's like a taco shell and you like, put the meat in, a flying taco. Because we
Very
saw
specific, but yeah, nice.
well, that's what I
like
used to call it. I used to call it flying tackle because you jump. Because Alexi Lawless, one of my first training sessions as a young pro, when we played together in New England Revolution, he's like, "Get your elbows up," because he tagged me in the back of the ear. Still feel like my skull's broken, which would make sense. But he's like, "Get your fucking elbows up." Sorry, Tim. And so then when I jump, I'd always jump and like have guys underneath. But the idea was, like that way you're protecting yourself, and you always know like when you're coming through how to lead, how to get a piece of someone different times. But yeah, again, I wonder what led up to that point where he would put himself in such jeopardy. Now, that being said, everybody understands if you pick up that straight red card for endangering the safety of opponent, 3-game suspension, whatever games are upcoming, you're going to be out of that competition. I don't like it. I've never liked it. I thought it was crazy that is a rule, but rules is rules, as they say.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, there is a conversation to be had about this 8-second goalkeeper thing for my fab, which I would like to do, but I think we'll park it for today and do it another time because it will.
They
come
don't
back
call the
round
6-second one. Why call the 8-second one?
Stupid. The whole thing's stupid, and we will talk about it. But it won't be, and you get a corner afterwards. Anyway, that's going to be fun, but it won't be this show. I wanted to get to heroes and villains of the weekend, and just start with something that I thought was absolutely villainous. Now, firstly, there's been a lot of kind of abuse of Liam Roberts, the Millwall goalkeeper, online, like grow up, all that sort of stuff. Ridiculous thing. And I absolutely don't condone that in any way. Don't do that. I just utterly unacceptable online behavior. And also come off Twitter as well. It's owned by an evil oligarch. I just wanted to talk about the incident itself and kind of my feelings on it, really. So Liam Roberts, if you haven't seen this, is the Millwall goalkeeper, and he's running out of his penalty area to close down Jean Phillipe Mateta, the Crystal Palace striker, and the ball is sort of in the air, going through. Mateta's going to get onto it. Goalkeeper comes out. Now, the way the goalkeeper goes out with this challenge can only really be described as an insane flying head kick. Like, it truly is a bad challenge. His studs are up in the air. If this catches Jean Phillipe Mateta in the eye, he's blind in one eye and his career is over in that moment. I think he had 25 stitches. I would need to verify that, but I read that this morning. 25 stitches.
That's what I read.
He has posted on social media. I don't think on the oligarchs one. I think a better one owned by a different billionaire. But he did say, I'm doing well and I hope to be back soon. The loser billionaire that you dress like occasionally, I think, as opposed to the oligarch billionaire destroying the world.
I hate you.
Post at a time.
No
worries, Zuck. But like, I'm just watching this and like, obviously you've played, Dunny, and you've been involved in skirmishes and scraps and things like that when you play. And obviously, I played at youth level where every Sunday was a fight. It's the reason I stopped playing, because it was just, A, I was always too hungover, but B, I just got fed up of getting to fights. Like, it's such a drag to get into a fight every weekend. First few were quite fun. When it's like the 20th time, it's like, oh, I'm doing something else. So like, fine. But like this challenge, I think it's so important to look after the safety of the other players. It's why I don't understand why shin pads have disappeared. It's why I do, to a degree, think that any challenge where the toes are high should sort of be punished. I don't know. I just sort of feel like every player coming off the field not injured, being able to play next week beyond a muscle injury, should be quite high on the players' list of things and objectives, as well as the officials. Anyway, watching this, I actually felt my stomach turn a bit, because it's unprofessional, it's terrible technique. It really was an unacceptable challenge from Liam Roberts. And I just sort of thought, like, if this is the standard you are at, I'm not sure this is the sport for you. Honestly, I feel like the technique is so bad. The lack of care is so bad. I know there's loads of ways to apologize for it and excuse it. I get it. And I could be convinced on it. But watching it, I can tell you my gut reaction was that is horrid. That is horrid and deserves, almost like, when you get caught speeding or drunk driving or whatever, and they have a course to realign your mind as to what the responsibilities are when it comes to driving. Like, your responsibility here is not to do this. And it's so unorthodox and so unnecessary. I felt sort of similar with the Edison Mane thing a few years ago.
That was going to be my reference point. Yeah.
But this felt worse than that to me, because it just I don't know. Give us your thoughts.
Well, if the difference between Sadio Mane and Ederson obviously was attacking player, reaching for a ball with foot exposed, catching an outcoming goalkeeper, whereas this is a goalkeeper seeing where the ball is coming from, coming through the ball and leaving feet up. And I said this during counterattack on SiriusXM FC. I don't like trying to put myself in a situation where I have to judge what a player was doing or what his thought process was. Because I think in an honest moment in which nobody else is around, you will actually get the insight like, did you mean to catch him? Like, did you mean to do him? Did you mean like, and they'll be honest. People will be honest when no one else is around. But in a moment like that, trying to get the ball and again, Millwall keeper, atmosphere, let him die, Crystal Palace, like there's dynamic FA Cup, there's dynamics to this conversation. And as a former player, like I like to leave. I loved leaving a tackle in on somebody. Like I would win the ball, but I wanted to leave it on somebody.
Mm.
A header, a tackle, a challenge. Like I wanted you to know I was there. And so I can physically remember the very first time, like I tried to hurt somebody and I felt really bad about it afterwards because I wrecked some kid in club soccer going
Well, he
into
ruined the wedding.
but then I had my buddy Petey Vinas. He missed his high school graduation because some guy purposefully knocked him out, like went after him in a game. So I was very like at that point on, I was like, there's a difference between getting a piece of somebody and like trying to hurt somebody. In this moment, when I first watched it, my gut instinct was like, oh, he did that on purpose. But again, I don't know. I like that's on him. He would be honest. But my God, like he could have decapitated him. Like in any other split second, any other angle, any other trajectory. Like this is a life or death situation that we're talking about. So the fact that he wasn't sent off was wild to me.
Yes. The
Immediately.
referee is standing 10 feet away looking straight at it and needing
Your
VAR.
best referee, by the way.
Well, we'll talk about that another time, but this is hideous decision.
But yeah, I mean, the fact that thank God he's okay, first and foremost. But yeah, I saw that Crystal Palace made a statement. Steve Parrish made a statement. The fact that he was conscious didn't sound like there was concussion concern that, he cleared whatever protocol that was, but that's your guy, Michael Oliver. That's the pride of English refereeing right there, that he needed a VAR intervention to take a look.
Yeah, get that. Don't get that.
That was it was Nigel de Jong kind of like World Cup vibes into Xabi Alonso's chest. Like, I don't know. That was a bad one not to see straight red immediately.
Well, I mean, let's just briefly on that, because again, to get your player perspective on this, like, I would lose confidence in a referee that couldn't see that as an immediate red. Like, I now, from that
That's
point,
fair.
have no confidence in the referee on the field making the right decision, be it as minor as a trip or whatever, or as big as a penalty and everything in between. I now have no faith that you can come to the right decision because you can't see that a kick with the studs in the face is a red and you need it to be corrected. And the big ones will be corrected. This was corrected. VAR got it right. That's great. But like the small ones don't get corrected. Yellows don't get corrected. Little nibbles here and there don't get corrected. And so now I doubt absolutely everything of your judgment because that's your judgment. That's a concern, no?
Yeah. I mean, but the controversy surrounding, in particular, Premier League referees has been extraordinarily high. They are absolutely amongst the elite in refereeing, but with some of these mistakes, I can understand. Listen, I'm not going to try to convince anybody whether they like it or not, whether they think he's a good ref or not. The reality is, in that situation, we were very, very close to having a very horrific situation unfold. And it already is, with 25 stitches to effectively reattach his fucking ear. Sorry, Tim. So,
it's bad.
Again, I'm cognizant of moments. And my hope was for Liam Roberts that his intent was to only win the ball, and that unfortunately the circumstances of two players going into opposite directions was a part of that collision, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to win this ball and give a little extra as he came through.
Well, 3-game ban's not enough. I will say that. Right. Give us a villain of the week. I've got Liam Roberts who tried to decapitate someone. So can you top that?
Yeah, that was going to be mine, but I'm going to go with Manchester
Okay.
United on my birthday, wasting 3 fucking hours of my life. Sorry, Tim, of watching that complete disaster against Fulham and literally texting all you Nuggets saying like, dude, if I just sat through this to lose in penalties, I'm going to fucking lose it. Sorry, Tim. And I did. I went on a
Yeah.
bike ride afterwards with my 7-year-old.
Nice. That's nice. I can't remember when we recorded last week, but it was real nice coming out of West Ham on Thursday and be like, yeah, the season's over now. It's properly over. I honestly don't care now. It's fantastic. Give us a hero of the weekend, Danny. Who's your hero?
Let's see. My hero, I'm gonna go with I gotta go with Bruce Arena. Bruce Arena. 2 back-to-back wins to kick off the season. The 4-0 win at home against Real Salt Lake, 2-1 win on the road at Sporting Kansas City. Chicho Rongo gets his goal. Joseph Martinez gets his goal. High-flying attack. Hernan Lopez, their creative midfielder, take a second yellow with like 35 minutes remaining. They hold on for the win. For all the conversations, wherever you fall in line with Bruce Arena in Major League Soccer, U.S. men's national team, whatever, blah, blah, blah. The fact is, he's recreating in a very short amount of time what he did at the LA Galaxy, what he did at the New England Revolution. And I think San Jose Earthquake fans, long suffering, never spoken about, are going to be insanely excited about this season underneath Bruce. And yeah, 6 points, first 2 matches. Just score more goals than your opponents, you stupid knuckleheads.
Such a great impression. I hope he does well forever. I've also got an MLS hero for you, and like it's sort of a British perspective on it, but I love it when like we in England learn MLS things. Like I'll never forget when I first learned about the Timber Joey and the soaring thing that Portland Timbers do and all that.
Scares
Like
out of me every single time. Sorry, Tim. Like when he
so,
walks around the fan, like he doesn't have the chain on, right? He can't have
it's
the chain on.
mental. No, it's
Does
not
he
on. No, I think they have like
a fake
kind
one?
of a fake one, like, and then they
Chainless?
bring out the real one when they actually do it. I think that's what they do. I think someone told me that once. But anyway, when I first found out about it, I was like, this is amazing. I love this thing. And so I knew about the Charlotte Crown thing, but I'd never really watched it. Like I knew it was happening, and I just thought, okay, cool. I've no idea whoever has won man of the match in the Charlotte game before this weekend. But now we all know. And everyone's saying a bit about, is it like Royal City or something like that? They really push the crown and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
They should be called Real Charlotte in many ways. That'd be a good name.
Shut your face.
But like Wilfried Zaha, who I love winning it, is great. But then him climbing the steps. I wonder how bizarre this was for Wilfried Zaha. Climbing the steps, sitting on the throne like Steve Austin in 96, putting the crown on and just like having to act like a king for a few minutes. Like, excellent. Loved it. No notes, really. No notes.
Yeah,
I just loved it.
nothing. No, and listen, he was fantastic. He was antagonistic. He shoved Malanda, who not Malanda, who was it? It was one of the Atlanta center backs slid over. He kind of bodies up, and Welf just shoves him 2 hands from behind, and they're like over the end line, like into the board. And like it got like I thought for a second we were gonna see some, handbags at 2 or 3 paces. Exciting, electric. Patrick Ajiman up top. You've got Abada, you got BL. I'm actually heading out there in a couple weeks. Never called a game in Charlotte. Super excited to see the atmosphere. 50,000 people. The city absolutely loves the team. And Dean Smith's done a great job. They were terrible in Seattle. They figured out a way to get the point on the road, 2-2 draw. And I thought they looked fantastic against, the team that a lot of people thought was going to be a big player in the Eastern Conference in Atlanta United underneath Ronnie Dyla, with Miranchuk, with Miguel Almiron, Latte Loth up top from Middlesbrough, who's absolutely flying. So, yeah, Wilf, after the birth of his child coming back, great debut, man of the match, and I think he's going to be an important piece of the puzzle for Major League Soccer.
One of the few players that have not played for my team that I would pay actual money to go and see. Wilf
He's
Zaha
fun,
across
man.
the last decade.
Yeah.
So good. I mean, of course, I didn't do that, but I would have done it.
I wish he would have stayed at United when he went up as a kid.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a shame.
yeah.
I mean, he is a real cautionary tale for make that move at the right time, and because he didn't, and the whole furore of it. I wouldn't say he wasted his career at Crystal Palace. He's got a mural and he's a legend at that club, and I don't want to kind of disrespect that in a way, but he could have
On to
been
play Champions League.
he could have been a Champions League player for, 60,
Anybody.
70 games and
Yeah.
challenge. He could have gone to Milan when they were good, yada, yada, yada. But anyway, love to see it. And I hope he does well. And he looks like he is doing well. And the crown thing, spectre, some would say. Right, we're out of time on today's Week in the Tackle. That's Brian Dunseth over there, who looks impossibly young. I'm Tom Rennie. Tim Horsey produced the programme in post. Bad luck, bud. See you next week.
Sorry?